All right, everyone, welcome to the Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derrick Broze. I hope you guys can hear me okay. If you can hear me coming through, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, give me something. Hey, okay, I guess you guys are hearing me good. What's going on? This is episode 89 of the Conscious Resistance Live. We're going to go ahead and share this out. If you guys know the drill by now, go ahead and share this out everywhere you can. Comment below, let us know where you're listening from. I'm here in Houston, Texas, getting ready for another important night of informing you guys of lots of information, and I'm excited for the show tonight. So again, comment below, let everyone know where you're listening from, whether you're watching this live or watching this later. And if you see somebody maybe tuned in from nearby where you're at, if you go ahead and comment to them, say, hey friend, how are you? I just wanted to let you know I'm in your area. Perhaps we can get connected. Perhaps we can work together in some capacity. These are the things that you might want to consider, but perhaps not. Perhaps you don't need to do those things. Perhaps you can just stay in your own little bubble if you choose. That's all up to you, right? Hopefully, though, what we're after is actually going to be about building community, connecting to each other, and trying to build a better world. So I'm going to give just a moment for everyone who can share this out. Share it out on whatever pages you are involved in, whatever groups you run. Tonight our topics, in case you haven't seen this, are Chinese surveillance state. We're talking about paying for the war. We're going to get a little bit caught up on the war, and we're going to talk about 5G surveillance grid and the latest studies on cell phones, the smart grid, 5G, and everything that you need to know. But first, you can see right here, this is our website. You're looking at theconsciousresistance.com, and you can get plugged into that if you want to see our latest work. And you can also, for those who are maybe interested in Anarchapulco, for those who might have heard of Anarchapulco, it is a conference based in Acapulco, Mexico. You can see right here, there's a link to that. I'll be speaking there in February 2019. You can get some discount tickets if you want to go check that out and be around other freedom-minded, free, empowered, beautiful individuals in this world. And other than that, you can subscribe to our newsletter down here to make sure that no matter what happens on social media, you can actually keep up with our work. And some of you may know that by the end of this year, we will no longer be using Facebook, we will no longer be using YouTube, Google, Amazon, etc., because we really want to try to get people to look at other alternatives out there. And the reality is that these software programs, these algorithms, let's say, I'm gonna put the blame on the algorithm, okay? Like, the algorithm itself is not friendly to our cause, the cause of freedom, the cause of awakening people. The algorithms that are running these programs, that are running these websites and manipulating our lives, really, at the end of the day, are basically forgetting about free speech. They're forgetting about what it's like to empower yourself, and what it's like for those of us on the, quote, bottom, to be able to stand up for ourselves. All they're concerned with is power. They're concerned with money. They're concerned with centralization. When the future, friends, in case you haven't noticed, the future of the world is decentralized. We're going into an increasingly decentralized world, and we'll get into that tonight. But first off, let's go dive right off into the news. I think I've rambled enough. We can go ahead and get started. Let's start with talking about the Chinese surveillance state. This is an article I literally just put together in the last hour or so, just based on some different articles that I've been putting together, and things that I've been reading. And if anybody out there with a brain, anybody paying attention, knows that the Chinese state, the Chinese government, has an increasing amount of influence over our world, not only in terms of their economy, in terms of their political influence, but the companies, the money that's involved in China, the big tech companies like Amazon and Facebook and others, they increasingly want to work with the Chinese government because there's a lot of money to be made there. And they also are more than willing to work with the Chinese standards. And what I mean by that is, in China, there's already a very strong dystopian surveillance state that is in existence. In the United States, there are people in the Western world, say the Britain, Australia, the United States, people are trying to fight off this surveillance grid, this surveillance state, and what people are concerned with, things like 5G. But in China, it's already taking place. They already have their Sesame credit, social credit system, and it's already strong in place. I mean, so they're already able to block people from traveling. They're already able to block people out of essential services. And it's really sad, and it's kind of scary and disturbing. So this article I put here together is called "China is Helping Governments of the World Build Their Own Surveillance State." And it looks at a couple different articles. And essentially what I just say here is go ahead, do a search of China and surveillance. And don't use Google, because Google, of course, is a part of the problem. Use DuckDuckGo or some alternative search engine. DuckDuckGo.com, if you've never heard of that, I'll type that below. It's an alternative search engine that doesn't track you. But go use DuckDuckGo and type in China surveillance, and you're going to get hit with a number of articles that are all talking about the growing digital dystopia being finalized across the People's Republic of China. And there's titles like Smart ID Cards and Facial Recognition, How China Spreads Surveillance Tech Around the World, or China's New Surveillance State, Everyone Will Be Watched, Reviewed, and Rated. I mean, this is the reality of what's going on around us, right? This is what people have feared in the United States is already reality in much of China. There's those two articles I was talking about. But it's not just staying within the borders of China. There's actually a new report out by Reuters that discusses how a Chinese company, the telecom giant ZTE Corp, is developing a smart card for Venezuela that's going to help the Venezuelan government track their citizens' every move. And it basically describes how they had officials from Venezuela go visit China, and they were just blown away. They were amazed at how amazing the Chinese system was and how they were able to track everybody, and they thought it was something they must have. So Reuters actually talked to Anthony Daquin, who is a former technical advisor and member of the Venezuelan delegation who actually went to China. And the crazy thing is, he says that he started to realize that there was potential for privacy concerns and that it could be used for government control. It says the following year, when he raised concerns with Venezuelan officials, he was detained, beaten, and extorted by intelligence agencies. They knocked several teeth out with a handgun and accused him of treasonous behavior, prompting him to flee the country, and government spokespeople, of course, said they had no comment on this situation. So that was 10 years ago, and now this whole system has come into fruition, and we're basically seeing all of this play out now. Think about that. So 10 years ago, he goes with Venezuelan officials to China to get a handle on what they're doing there and how they might be able to use it, and realizes that there's a problem. He tries to turn whistleblower and basically gets beaten, gets attacked, right? And I mean, now this whole system, this Venezuelan smart card, what they're calling the Fatherland card, it's a smart ID card, and it sends data about an individual's activity. It's currently linked to the government via subsidized food and health and other social programs. So anybody on social programs is already being tracked and monitored on the government's radar. So this is just kind of another method to do that, right? So this just makes it a little bit easier. And of course it said that it has access to everything from your healthcare records, your banking records. It can also tell whether you voted or not, what your political affiliations are. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And this is, I mean, it's really just par for the course, right? This is the way these things operate. And I mean, I'm not trying to sound too cynical here because, well, this is news, right? It's facts. We can't really stop these facts. But we could also try to maybe not work towards our own enslavement. Perhaps that maybe we actually start opposing these systems and not blindly helping them. Here's another article. China is exporting its digital surveillance methods to African governments. Now, that sounds pretty bad, and it sounds just like it sounds. Basically, this article says that the Chinese government and corporations are providing technological infrastructure to authoritarian regimes and insisting that international companies accept Chinese content regulation even outside of the borders of China. According to the U.S.-based think tank Freedom House, this is an existential threat to the future of the open internet and prospects for greater democracy around the globe. Quartz reports, over the past year, China has hosted sessions on its sprawling system of censorship and surveillance for media officials from countries such as Morocco, Egypt, and Libya, and Northern Africa. Last November, it is also held a 2-week seminar on cyberspace management for officials of countries along the Belt and Road Initiative. So that's just one level of it. And the other aspect of it that I talk about in this article is the fact that U.S.-based companies like Google and Facebook have talked about working with the Chinese government, showing that they're perfectly okay with working within these totalitarian regimes, right? I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Like, these companies, which you guys me including at the current moment, we make use of their technology, we make use of their tools, and they're using it to gather data on us so that they can partner with governments. They've shown their hand. They're more than willing to build surveillance grids. They're more than willing to monitor your every move and to hand that information over to government. They're more than willing to conduct social experiments using social media. I mean, the more you understand this, my friends, my brothers and sisters, the more you understand this technology, and you read books like, say, Surveillance Valley, and you start to understand that nearly every single technology that has been rolled out to us, be it the internet itself, cellular technology, GPS technology, all of these things started out as military technology that had a purpose, and that purpose was to monitor the people and to track movement. So some would argue that the releasing of this technology was done by design, done to get all of us silly people here sucking it up, making use of it, and just giving our information over. So yeah, check that article out at theconsciousresistance.com. I will post that link again, and any comments on that I will get to. One of the stories we're going to talk about tonight, I do definitely want to get a lot of your comments. I want to hear some thinking on what you're looking at. Actually, let's just hop right over there right now. I'll go ahead and open up the Conscious Resistance Facebook page, and I want to show you guys an article I posted earlier. This is not necessarily breaking headline national news, but I think it's entertaining enough, it's interesting enough, it creates conversation, and that's what we're about here, is having conversations and how we can connect to each other, right? So earlier today I posted an article about it was from the American Civil Liberties Union, discussing how prisoners in California are being turned into firefighters for the state, right? They're being given an opportunity where they can knock some time off their sentence if they choose to go ahead and fight fires. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? If they go out there and put their lives on the line, they can knock some time off of their sentence, and it's voluntary. They're not being forced into it as far as I can see. But my argument here was basically just saying, like, look, they're paying these guys $1.45 a day, okay? So what I wrote earlier today is that the message that paying them $1.45 a day just sends the message that their time and thus their lives are worth less than others, right? I don't know that this is the right type of message that I personally would like to see out there as far as these human beings. And it's really disturbing to me whenever, and hopefully I don't get this from you guys out there. Hopefully some of you guys have compassion and empathy. But I shared my story. Many of you out there know that I'm a former meth addict, and I went to prison 13 years ago. I did my time in Texas state prisons. Prison didn't reform me, didn't turn me into a journalist, didn't turn me into a conscious being. That was a personal choice I made, because those places are horrible. They're not about rehabilitation. They're just throwing people in cages, many times for victimless crimes, including drug use and things like that, just so they can lock them up and make all kind of money off them, right? So whether or not they're paying them $1.45 to fight fires, or they're paying them pennies on the dollar to go in there and sew and do crafts that are going to end up going towards clothes that are going to be sold for like a 10 times profit in some big fancy department store, do you think this is right? If this is okay that inmates are treated this way? You know, one thing I've noticed in these comments are people say, and I'm sure if somebody out there is thinking it, don't do the crime if you don't want to do the time, which of course just it's assuming a blind faith in the justice system, that every single person that's in prison should be there, that their crimes were actually crimes, or that, you know, that the system itself works, that like throwing people in a cage is effective. So like there's really no healthy way to argue this. Like here's Frank Bromley, let's put him on blast. Don't break the law and go to prison. I'm sorry, what of their victims? Some of them lose a lot and get nothing in return. These guys are fed clothes, bed, shower. They get more than these poor people who did nothing wrong and lost everything. Too bad, at least you're making something. And again, there's a lot of assumptions. Like he's assuming, like I guess in his mind he has like, you know, he's thinking of like the worst criminals, assault, rapists, killers, murders, things like that. And here's his response. I said basically, what victims? Don't make the false assumption that everyone in prison has a victim. Some people are locked up for victimless crimes like drugs. And what I mean when I talk about victimless crime, I mean that literally if there is no victim, there is no crime. So if I'm speeding, if I run a red light, or if I you know, jaywalk or something like that, and nobody is hurt in the process, and there's no victim to stand and say, I was hurt, I'm a victim of this person's actions, then there is no crime. I don't care what the law says. Like, there's no crime, right? And this is what I'm talking about. And this bootlicker says, Frank Bromley says, they shouldn't be in there in the first place. But assaulted, raped, burglary, fraud, those all have victims. And really, if drugs is illegal, don't fucking do them. Duh. Like, I mean, I don't know. But let me just check out some of your comments. What do you guys think about this? Should prisoners be paid anything for any work they do? Should, you know, if they're voluntarily going to fight fires and putting themselves in a risky situation, you know, that's fine. It's consensual. It's voluntary, right? And somebody says, hey, go do this crazy thing, and if you survive, we'll knock some time off your sentence. Some people might be willing to do that. But $1.45, I don't know. And what do you guys think about this? I'll check out some of the comments here. Incredible that so many people are so tolerant of others. They don't want people who are not like them. Haters are not welcome. So it's not okay. Wrong, and even if it's true, it's still wrong per hour, per day. Does giving more second chances, America does give more second chances than others, could get your head chopped or lashed in bowl of rice for the rest of your life. So Chris Collins is basically, a commenter here on Facebook, is basically saying it could be worse. You're in America, at least we treat people good. And this is that whataboutism sort of thing. Have you guys heard about this recently? It's becoming more known as a logical fallacy because increasing amount of people seem to use it. But you don't actually address the situation. You say, well, what about this? Or, well, for example, the clearest example, you point to a Trump supporter and say, hey, did you know Trump's doing this? And they'll say, well, did you know Obama did this? Or did you know Obama started it? And the Obama people, when you said that to them, they would say, well, did you know that Bush started that? Or actually Bush did that first? It's a way to distract and not actually look at the information. So he's saying, yeah, well, maybe that's bad, but America gives more second chances than others. If you were in other places, you could get your head chopped off or you could get lashed. Sure, that's true. But does that make it any better to do what they're doing here? Does that make it moral or right or just or anything? I mean, I don't know what a living wage is exactly. I don't necessarily believe in the minimum wage. That's a whole other conversation. But I think paying someone $1.45 a day is just spitting on their face, especially if they're going to go try to fight fires and save people's houses or lives. Maybe they deserve a little more than that. But maybe giving somebody time off their sentence is a big thing as well, because that's time back in your life, right? I don't know. You guys tell me what you think below, the comments below. Let's go ahead and move forward now. I want to touch on another story. We'll step back a moment related to 5G and cell phones. Now, if you've been following our show here and following my work recently, you know that we have been paying attention to 5G smart grid rollout. I'm here in Houston, Texas, and this is one of the places where it's very active, where it's taking place. This is the very beginning. It's, you know, there's several cities across the U.S., but Houston, they said this was the world's first 5G customer and things like that. So I've been actively going to city council. You can go to our BitChute channel, which I will post to you right now on Facebook. In the comments below, but it's just bitchute.com/channel/the conscious resistance instead of relying on YouTube, because as I said, we won't be on YouTube come 2019. But if you go there, you can see I recently put out a new video, this one right here, called A Vision of a 5G Smart City. That's from this morning. Please check that out. I'll post that link to you as well. I also put out a new video this week. I went to City Council for the 3rd time this week. I've been going to City Council now for over a month, specifically related to 5G. And some of you may have seen those videos going back. Let me see if I can find you one. I was also on the local news recently in Houston. This video right here, talking to the Fox affiliate about 5G. I'll post these links for those of you who want to see more of this. But my point is I've made several visits now going to City Council and raising awareness about this and trying to get more people paying attention to it. And it's, you know, I've been met with some silence. I've been met with some resistance, you could say. I've been met with a lot of nothing. But I do think that there is a reason to continue to do this. I'm going to City Council not because I believe that the people there are all of a sudden going to listen to me and join our side and question 5G and things like that. I'm going there for you guys, for every one of you out there who opposes 5G, and maybe you're in a smaller city and you know, you might not have much of an effort to resist it. But if we actually if we actually stop it or slow it down here in Houston, which is the 4th biggest city in the country, the United States, we might actually be able to get some of you smaller cities to have an easier time. So I want to play you this video really quickly here, and hopefully the sound comes out all right, of my visit to City Council this week. And I implore you guys, I'm going to post the information to this link, and please, 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 starting Monday, if you can help us out here in Houston, go make some phone calls, send out some emails. I already wrote up an easy template for you to do. And it's not because, again, I think that they're going to join our side. This is more about putting them on public record and showing that the city council, the mayor, the head of Verizon, they have all been informed that we are aware that there are studies showing dangers associated with the technology that 5G is bringing and things like that. And we're going to get more into that in a moment. But first, let me just show you this quick video that I did earlier this week at City Council. Alright, I don't know if the sound is working that great for that, but I'll just give you guys a recap in case you couldn't hear that great. Again, this is my 3rd visit after coming there several times, and I'll post this link so you can watch it right afterwards. It is on our Facebook page, and it's also on BitChute and DTube and all those kinds of things. But basically, I'm sitting there telling them that you know, I'm sick of basically going there and being met with silence. And if that they actually want to do something about it, then they need to listen to the people. Every time I've been coming on the internet and talking to you guys and putting these videos online, people are responding. People are concerned about this issue. People want to know what's going on. The city of Houston and most of the cities are ignoring our concerns, and the only way that we're going to change that is if you guys choose to do something different. So that's why I'm asking on all of you to please call City Council, please email Houston City Council. I listed a number of studies, and I'm just going to post this short template for you guys, and you can look in the video, you can see all the research. Don't trust me, of course. Don't blindly trust me and take my word for it. I want you guys to do your own research, to go ahead and see what it means when we install these small cells, these towers and this new infrastructure surrounding our world, and how that's going to affect us, right? Because the studies are out there, and the studies are showing, like I listed here, Kaiser Permanente study on miscarriages, showing that cell phones and Wi-Fi link to a small rise in miscarriages in women. We got National Toxicology Program study on rats. You got The Nation writing an article how big wireless convinced the U.S. that cell phones are safe. You know, these are articles that you might not have ever seen, but I'm going to show them to you really quick, and I'll post the links to you. This is why there's a concern, and there should be more concern around this, and why people should be asking questions. Now, in my city, when I see them rushing forward and I see them not giving people the opportunity to speak, because there was no public comment period, there was no vote on this, there was no, as far as we know, environmental impact study. Look at this, San Francisco Gate back in 2017, radiation typical of cell phones and Wi-Fi linked to high rates of miscarriages. Then you have the National Toxicology Program from November 1st. We're going to get into that in just a moment. My point is that these conversations are still evolving. Yes, we've been using cell phones for a couple of decades now, and some of you would like to assume that means they're safe, but the reality is they're not. Or at least let me be more hesitant. at least we don't know 100% just yet, right? This is from The Nation. How big wireless made us think that cell phones are safe. A special investigation. The disinformation campaign and massive radiation increase behind the 5G rollout. This was labeled the #4 top censored story of 2018. And you probably didn't hear about it because it's been censored. Go back to August 2016. The LA Times. Is 5G technology dangerous? Early data shows a slight increase of tumors in male rats exposed to cell phone radiation. I mean, could it be more clear? And now we'll get into my latest article for the Conscious Resistance. I wrote this earlier today. The latest research clearly indicates cell phones can cause cancer. Now again, I'm going to share this link with you. These are my words based on my research, but please go and look at the links for yourself and see what it says. Don't trust me, especially those of you who might think I'm just some idiot on Facebook and I don't know anything. I'm a journalist. This is my full-time gig. I am a researcher. I stand by my words, but you can dismiss it if you want. Do your own research and look into what is going on, right? Now, I mentioned here, 2 new studies just in the last 3 weeks have come out from the National Toxicology Program and Environmental Research Journal showing that clear evidence that radio frequency radiation, which is the type of radiation emitted by cell phones, 2G and 3G specifically, can cause cancer. First, earlier this month, the National Toxicology Program released data concluding that there is clear evidence radio frequency radiation can cause brain and heart tumors in male lab rats. This $30 million study took more than 10 years to complete as researchers examined the evidence of prolonged exposures to high levels of RFR, the type of radiation emitted by 2G and 3G. There was also evidence of tumors in the brain and adrenal gland of male rats. For female rats, male and female mice, the evidence was equivocal as to whether cancers were observed. And of course, they say that these results should not be applied to the human population, however. They say that despite us showing that this is happening in rats, it doesn't apply to us because supposedly it's because the radiation was for 2 years of the rats' lives for up to 9 hours a day, which they say, according to John Butcher, PhD, senior scientist with the National Toxicology Program, the exposure in these studies cannot be compared directly to the exposure of humans experience when using a cell phone. Why is that? They say because this was being blasted on the animal's whole body, and that's not something we're typically exposed to. When we're holding a cell phone, it's only on our brain, or it's right here in our hands, or it's in our pockets. We're not being, bombarded by it 24 hours a day. At least that's what they say. But then you have to put into the equation Wi-Fi and the coming 5G and this bombardment of what Dr. Sharon Goldberg testified to the Michigan State Senate, saying this was like a sandwich of radiation from all different sources. The Internet of Things is coming, and it's going to bring these new points of data and interconnected devices that are going to be putting out all kinds of frequencies that really we don't know what the hell it's going to do to us. So that's just in the last 2 weeks from the National Toxicology Program. And that's pretty amazing just to see them admit that. But of course the FDA stepped up and said, hey, this does not apply to humans. After reviewing the study, we disagree with the conclusions of this regarding clear evidence of carcinogenic activity in rodents. So the FDA trying to step in and say, don't worry, nothing to see here. However, I found this earlier today. Ronald Melnick, PhD, he released a statement, and this guy is actually the former senior toxicologist and director of special programs at the Environmental Toxicology Program, who designed the original exposure systems used in this study. So he's no longer with them, but he was with these agencies that conducted this study, and he's saying, that they're ignoring the fact that that every study that we do looks at the effects of animals and then extrapolates from that to see how it's going to affect humans. And he says, Dr. Shuren of the FDA neglects to note that these findings, excuse me, where I lost myself for a second. He shows that the conclusions about human risk cannot be drawn from animal studies, and that this runs counter to standard practice of evaluating human cancer risks by public health agencies, including the EPA, the NTP, and even the FDA itself. And he says every chemical known to cause cancer in humans is also carcinogenic in animals when adequately tested. So right there he's saying, like, the doctor himself who's involved basically is saying that that we're going to see effects of this. Do radio waves worry you? Are you a troll? No, radio waves don't worry me. Cell phones emit non-ionizing radiation. Yes, non-ionizing radiation, but I think you, sir, should probably go do some more research if you think that non-ionizing radiation has no effects, or look at the research on the spectrum that 5G is involved in. And now, the conclusion of this article, which I will blow out anything that this guy is saying right now, not only did the National Toxicology Program say that they're causing tumors and cancer in rats, but just like in the last couple days, we have a new study called from the journal Environmental Research. So back in 2011, stay with me now, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, which is part of the World Health Organization, in 2011 they designated cell phone signals and cell phone radiation as potentially or possibly carcinogenic to humans. So that was like a brand new designation, and it was kind of a big thing for them to do that. It made headlines all over the world. So since then, though, researchers actually, in the new study, which was published in Environmental Research, they actually went and examined all of the studies that have happened since then. Studies between 2011 and 2017, since the IARC made that judgment call. And they analyzed a number of different studies. They found 9 studies from 2011 2017. So just in the last 7 years that reported increased risk of brain cancer from cell phone use, while 4 other studies report increased risk of vestibular nerve tumors. And the study also found a concern for increasing cancers of the breast, testes, leukemia, and thyroid gland. And this is what the researchers wrote. Based on the evidence reviewed, it is our opinion that the IRC's current categorization of radio frequency radiation as a possible human carcinogen should be upgraded to carcinogenic. So think about that. They're saying it should be changed from possible to straight up saying, yes, this will cause cancer to humans. And that is a pretty mind-blowing admission in a mainstream research journal. And they said, when considered with recent animal experimental evidence, the recent studies strengthen and support the conclusion that radio frequency radiation should be categorized as carcinogenic to humans. So go read the study yourself. Here's the press release from the National Toxicology Program: high exposure to radio frequency radiation associated with cancer in male rats. So, you know, people can try to deny this and say that it's not taking place or this doesn't exist, but the research is all around us. You got to do a little bit of digging, but I expect you guys to do your own research. Don't just blindly trust me. There's lots of groups out there who are trying to raise awareness about 5G and about the dangers of cell phones. And I'm not trying to be some kind of like anti-technology Luddite and say that like, okay, we should get rid of all technology or something like that. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's plausible, and it's not going to happen. But I do think that we should rethink what we're doing in our world and how we are going to live with these technologies, and what we're going to do in the future when there is no more privacy due to this overwhelming surveillance that it comes with. So I don't know. I think that we just need to start to have these conversations, and that's all I'm trying to do, is to have that conversation. How do we live our world and have freedom, have a way of life that is something we actually want to live, and not just being stuck in this dystopia of surrounded by digital devices, surveillance equipment, facial recognition technology, automatic license plate readers, biometrics, smart cards, smart IDs, smart grids, smart cities. Like, how do we, as a human species, move forward and maintain what we have come to know as freedom and privacy within that world? Is it possible? Does it exist? I don't know. I think we're going to find out in the coming years. All right, I'm going to move on to one of the last stories. I got 2 more, and then I'm going to wrap this up. This one is related to new documents that came out this week regarding the CIA trying to develop a truth serum, which is something they've been after for generations now. Those of you who followed this type of politics have known for years, since the MK Ultra experiments were revealed in the 70s. Of course, the MK Ultra were experiments during the 50s all the way up to the 70s that are supposedly over, where the government tried to do all type of experiments to people. They tested acid, LSD on people. They were looking for truth serums. I mean, it gets really deep. The MK Ultra, giving people acid is kind of just the tip of the iceberg. If you've never looked into this, I recommend doing so. You can also learn more about this by looking up other programs that were associated. There's like Project Artichoke. There's others, but what this new document, which was released by the American Civil Liberties Union, shows that the CIA's Office of Medical Services in a 90-page account, which was written by an unknown CIA medical official, explains how CIA doctors were looking for a truth serum drug that they could use on prisoners as part of a now classified project known as Project Medication. U.S. government lawyers have previously stated that the report was a draft and represented the impressions of one single officer, not the opinion of the whole agency. But according to the ACLU, the CIA studied records of old Soviet drug experiments as well as the CIA's notorious and discredited MKUltra program, which involves human experimentation with LSD and other drugs on unwitting suspects. The CIA doctors involved in Project Medication wanted to use Versed, a psychoactive drug similar to some of those used in MKUltra on prisoners. So it was never used, apparently, this is at least what they claim, but it's just kind of gives you a window into how the CIA operates. And the other thing is when you read this document, it also makes note of how the ACLU notes that the medical professionals were, quote, indispensable to legitimizing torture and attempted to provide a veneer of legality for torture methods. And what this means is that the doctors, they essentially came up with medical opinions, and the psychologists were involved, and they said, oh yeah, this is fine, this is all legal and ethical, oh it's okay, they won't be damaged too badly if you shove things up their rectum, or if you waterboard them, or if you make them stand for hours in a form of sleep deprivation and you beat them. Yeah, like the doctors promoted the idea that waterboarding actually provided periodic relief from being forced to stand and subjected to other forms of sleep deprivation and physical torture. In fact, the CIA's medical staff claimed that the torture program was, quote, reassuringly free of enduring physical or psychological effects. I mean, just how crazy and just disgusting is it that they got other human beings, just like the prison system, this torture and all these kinds of things, they're actually dehumanizing to all the people involved. Not only are they dehumanizing the people who are being abused and tortured, but the people involved who go along with that and then make excuses. They're called order followers, and without them, authority wouldn't be allowed to do the things they're doing. The people that are like, well, he's just doing his job, right? He's got kids and a family to feed. So if his job is torturing somebody for a living, you know, who are we to judge? It's bullshit. We have to have some sense of morality, and people need to be willing to take a stand. And I want to say shout out to the people over the years who have told me that they left the private defense industries because they just said, like, I couldn't do it anymore, I couldn't take it, and you know, they were giving me health care, they were giving me a 401k, but I was miserable, and I was, you know, participating in all kinds of horrible things. So, you know, some people actually will take a stand and will actually stand by their morals. So thank you to those who do that. And you can read the rest of these gruesome details, including details on the psychologists who are behind the torture program and who today still are walking free. These men made $80 million in taxpayer-funded money to develop a torture system for the CIA, and they were never held accountable, and they never will be held accountable. They continue to roam free, and that's just the American way, I guess, as they say. So I'm going to post that link there for you. And the last story that we're going to talk about here is relating to the war, the cost of the war, right? And let me see if I got this link ready for you. The cost of war around the globe, not just in, you know, the United States, specifically the cost of the United States government's war, and by that I mean the money that they've spent from the people, right? Because government doesn't own anything, they don't create anything, they simply take from the people via force, and if you don't pay up, well, then you're caged. You're thrown in a cage, and you can be punished forever. You'll be labeled an enemy of the state, and people will shame you and say, why didn't you want to have money taken from you to fund the war state? Why aren't you a good old American, good citizen of the state? You know, and you're the problem. You're the one that's disrupting our nation. Those of you out there who don't want to pay for war, you guys should be shamed and should, you know, be condemned. These are the kind of BS things they tell us, right? But it's because we live in a world now where war has been normalized. And although I was at a anti-war protest a couple of weeks ago, the Women's March on the Pentagon, which was not co-opted by George Soros or anybody else, and was actually an anti-war movement, there is still just a small amount of us who are opposing it. Journalistically and activist-wise, people are so worried about identity politics and dividing themselves that nobody is paying attention to the war, and it's sad. So let's look at this story right here. This is coming from Activist Post, which is written by Kurt Nimmo, looking at a study produced by Brown University, which shows that since the attacks of 9/11, which is just 2001, 2018, 17 years, the U.S. has spent $5.9 $5.9 trillion. Can you guys even understand what that number looks like? $5.9 trillion. 5.9 trillion. That's a lot of zeros. And that is the only reason we know about this is because these researchers went to their effort of actually trying to dig up all the stats on this, because of course the government itself doesn't report on all the stats, and you can never trust the government's numbers in the first place. But this is what the report says. There is no strategy for ending the wars. The fact that the U.S. keeps spending huge sums of wars for that, at the least in Afghanistan, are a stalemate, and in Iraq and Syria are unresolved, is a long-term budgetary problem which will affect future generations, the 7 generations and beyond. The government's pattern of reporting only DOT war spending obscures the magnitude of spending since 9/11. This comprehensive analysis of post-9/11 federal war and war-related spending conducted by the Costs of War Project is only one part of a greater assessment of the impact of these wars. The U.S. economy will, in the long run, find it difficult to sustain this level of military and war-related spending and the deficits it produces. And that's true. Just like every major empire throughout history, the U.S. is determined, because it's under the control of people who are manipulating things from behind the scenes, like most countries of the world. Like I was talking about Chinese totalitarianism earlier. Well, the people who are really manipulating, they don't care if the biggest country, the country in charge, is Chinese, American, Mexican, whatever, as long as they can dominate and control. And, you know, the other thing is that these numbers, which I'm going to go ahead and type out what that number looks like, 5.9 trillion, these numbers also obscure the fact that it was recent, you know, they obscure the human life fact, right? Okay, so money, that's a lot of money, right? And that was all stolen from taxpayers. So that's pretty screwed up. But there's also been like over 1 million deaths that have taken place due to these wars. And these wars, this is why a lot of this comes back to 9/11, because these wars are all based on a freaking lie that Osama bin Laden and some terrorists in the Middle East came and attacked the United States. If you don't know by now, the United States and other governments of the world lied about what happened in 9/11, and they continue to cover it up. Now, you got to dig deep into that for your own research, but the fact is that all of these wars, this report right here that finds 5.9 trillion spent since 9/11, which I will post to you right here, it is because of the lie of 9/11. The fact that we have surveillance technology, all of these things, people groping you in the airport, facial recognition, all this stuff is coming because they tell us it's going to keep us safe from the bad guys that perpetrated 9/11. And the reality, the people who helped perpetrate and cover up 9/11 are still in the U.S. government and the Israeli government and the Pakistani government, and I'm sure there's complicit people in the German government, the British government, and all the Western compliant NATO nations. So you will continue to pay for war as long as you pay taxes. And people will continue to die, and people will continue to come home with PTSD and be traumatized, and people will continue to shoot up buildings because they don't have benefits as veterans, or because they're homeless, or because they're coming back and they're getting addicted to opiates and other things as ways to process this, because they're not connected to their own hearts and minds, and they don't understand the need to work through their shit and work through their issues. And the government promised them everything, and when they come home, they're left with nothing. And the people out there who claim to care so much about the veterans, they don't give a damn about them, and they never do, and they never actually stand up for them. They never actually stand up to represent them. The last politician that mentioned any of the veterans that actually made an effort to represent them was Ron Paul, and they pushed him out as quickly as they could so that nobody would dare listen to this crazy old man talking about ending the wars, right? So until you stop paying taxes, until you find a way to join the war tax resistance, you're going to continue to pay trillions and trillions of dollars into that war. You're going to continue to pay for dead bodies on both sides of the war, and it's just going to continue. And just one little note on the war front while we're looking at it. This is basically, this last story here is focused on the fact that, well, as you can see, Rand Paul and others tried to get a bill passed that would actually refuse to sell weapons to Saudi-allied Bahrain, because if you know about the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world is going on in Yemen, and it's being funded by Saudi attacks, which are being furnished by American weapons, American companies, and by U.S. tax dollars, right? And Bahrain is allied with Saudi Arabia, and so Rand Paul and others called this a proxy effort to end the war in Yemen, since they basically said since they won't stop funding Saudi Arabia, you know, Trump and them said we'll stop letting them refuel at one of our ports or something like that, something, you know, that doesn't mean anything. but not actually stop the war, not actually stop the efforts, not actually stop the death and of children, of men, and of women, and all this continued crap going on. So they tried to hold a vote and say, well, let's at least stop funding Bahrain, and maybe that will slow them down. Guess what? Only 21 senators voted in support of this effort to end the arms sales. Arms means weapons, means death, means war. Don't let them confuse you with these euphemisms. Only 21 senators out of the whole freaking, all those people that, you know, have been elected into office. None of them care about stopping the war. None of them are going to make an effort to. The only thing that's going to stop war is you guys stop paying for it. Stop paying for their taxes. And if you want to know how you do that, I want to ask you guys to research agorism and counter-economics. I'll type that to you. Visit any of our channels on BitChute, on YouTube, on Facebook, on theconsciousresistance.com. Search in agorism, search in counter-economics, and you'll see the solutions you seek, because the solutions already exist. I've written 3 books about these ideas, about spiritual empowerment, personal empowerment, unplugging from the system, opting out, not paying taxes, removing your money, your time, your energy, and your spiritual support from their systems, and embracing new systems. The solutions exist. It's just about what are you willing to do to actually achieve this, because it's going to take you reworking your entire life. It's not going to be like, okay, well, I just got to press a button, or I got to buy this book, or I just got to watch this video, and everything's solved. It's a lot more difficult than that. It's a lot more involved in that. It takes changing your life, changing your efforts, changing how you live and what you do going forward. So if you're not willing to change your life and change your habits, then don't expect the world around you to change. Don't expect much of anything other than more of the same that we've seen throughout our lives. And I know that's not the most optimistic viewpoint, but it's the reality that I've come to realize after nearly 10 years of dedicating myself to activism and journalism and really taking this seriously for about 5 years, and even more so in the last 2 years. And I see that the solutions are only going to come once people realize how much work there is to do, how much we have to do in our own lives to change the world around us. It's not going to come from government. It's not going to come from corporations. It will come from private individuals, and maybe some of that will be businesses and companies that collaborate together. And sometimes maybe the government can get out of the way or can give you something to sort of relieve the suffering. But ultimately, the change comes from us as individuals and within our communities and our neighborhoods. And if you want to do that, decentralize, localize, I advise you, start getting connected into your heart, start getting to know your community, get to know your neighbors, start volunteering on community gardens, start finding some way to plug in, and find ways also to stop giving them your money. Maybe cut a little bit and report a little bit less. I'm not going to give you any legal advice or tax advice, but the research is out there, the information is available for those who choose to take solutions into their hands and change their lives. I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com, where you can find all of our latest content. Every weekend I send out a newsletter that you can get an update with all of our new videos, our new articles from myself and from our other content creators. We're always looking for new content creators if you want to join us. And we recently put out a documentary on Jeffrey Epstein that some of you may have seen, and we're working on new documentaries. If you want to support us, please visit patreon.com/Derrick Broze. All of the money that you see right here, it's $271 at this point, all of that goes towards paying my editor for these videos. So the more you contribute on a monthly basis or per documentary basis, the more we can do this content. And I'm so thankful to everybody who has helped out with that. That's it, guys. That's all I got for you tonight. Follow us on theconsciousresistance.com. Follow us on Steemit. Follow us on BitChute. Follow us on MeWe, on Minds.com. If you're on Telegram, post below and let me know how I can find you. I have my own Telegram channel where you can read all the articles that I'm reading and what I'm keeping up with. There's a lot of ways to get plugged in and to connect to each other, but it's going to take some effort, just like everything. Anyways, thank you guys so much for your time, your energy, your attention. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your weekend and that this was informative. Share it with somebody if you find it informative, and go out there and do something beautiful in your community this week. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.